guys, Justin Brock here, and today I have my friend Gary Alford with us, and we wanted to take a minute to talk about our new partnership, as well as just give a little bit of a background on Gary's agency and his career in the insurance industry, which has been nothing short of a blessing to him, I think, but also just a good testament to what hard work and doing the right thing over a long period of time will do for a good insurance practice. So thank you for being here, Gary.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Justin. I'm glad to be here. Absolutely. And I have, it's been a good ride for me, to tell you the truth. Very enjoyable. I'm not the best salesperson in the world, but I am one of the hardest working.
Hey,
I think I'll say.
Hard work wins. What do they say? Hard work beats talent if talent doesn't work hard. So I think you have a good mixture of both because you're a good communicator. But
well, thank you.
If you've been in the insurance industry about 20 years now, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And how long have you been independent and focused mostly on sales in the Medicare market?
Well, actually, I answered an ad in the newspaper back in 2002, and to go to work as an agent for Mutual of Omaha, career agent. And I interviewed at Clark Tower in Memphis and got the job, and then got my license after I got the job, of course, and started out doing the telemarketing leads and did good. The marketing company was in Dallas, and I did fine, had no problem at all. And then, as I had mentioned to you, when back in those days, we did not have the do not call list. So when the do not call list started, the leads kind of dwindled down. Still had leads, but not like we had before. Now, things have changed since then, as we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of leads to be had now. But at any rate, that is when I changed my business card. I've always been independent. I was a career agent, but still independent. But I changed my business card and started my agency, and that was in 2004. And things took off from day one. There was no doubt about it. I started doing mail-out letters. I did not do any telemarketing. I stabbed at that just a little bit by the data, the records, but I just was not much of a telemarketer myself, and I didn't really have room. I worked out of my home office for years. I worked out of my home, actually out of my house, up until 5-6 years ago. And I loved it, actually, to tell you the truth. The only reason that I moved out of my home and moved down the road not very far on Getwell is I had decided to slow down a little bit. I'm 70 years old right now, and I still wanted to work. I didn't want to quit completely. But in order for me to slow down, and my wife was my right-hand person, we had to hire people to take our place to slow down. And we had to hire probably at least 3 people to take my wife and my own place in the business. And that's when we moved to Getwell. And again, things just never slowed down. So when I got into the business, I learned right off the bat that if I do what's best for the policyholders, and everything works out from there. But what I was selling, and I learned this years ago. I've been self-employed all of my life. But what I was selling was service. That's, Medicare supplements, that's how I made a living. But what we had to offer, we're competing against Blue Cross, AARP, your big companies. And the one way that we could outperform them, so to speak, was our service. So our service, in my opinion, was 5-star. And I had a lot of compliments, a lot of letters from people constantly. I'd go out and write somebody up. Early on in the early years, I would make house calls. People would respond to the letters that I mailed out, and I'd call them up and set an appointment and go make house calls. And I'd get a letter from a lot of the people, and plus they I don't know why, but they would give me gifts. I went over to one person's house, gave me a box of shells, 9mm shells. The guy was 80-something years old, and he said, here, I'm not going to use these anymore. But the people were great. I love dealing with the people. I love dealing with seniors. Yeah. Never had a problem. But then I ran in to your dad, Bobby, in about 05, I think it was. And we hit it. In fact, not the first, but one of the first big insurance trips that I won through production, not to brag, but was to Cancun. No, it was Cabo. And that's where I met Bobby.
Was it this one?
Yeah, I've got one just like that, actually.
Is that one right there?
Yeah, let me see.
Cancun.
Constitution.
Yeah, Constitution.
Yeah, that's who it was, Constitution. Bobby was telling me how much he liked their sister company, American Pioneer. He had put on a lot of business with them.
Yeah.
So that's where I met Bobby, and we hit it off immediately. We were in a little van transporting us from the airport to the hotel, and he was in the van with us.
Yeah.
And Bobby was the leader in the van, believe it or not. He led the conversations. And we were all laughing and cutting up. But after we got to the hotel, I made it a point to look Bobby up. Yeah. I knew he was from Mississippi. We had talked about that. He mentioned that in the van. So I looked Bobby up, and we hung out a little bit. Not a whole lot, but, we became friends then. And this may sound a little corny, but Bobby was kind of a mentor of mine. If I had questions, I could ask Bobby, and I had other mentors. Bobby was not the only mentor, but he was a major mentor of mine. And he helped me get started. His ideas, I followed a lot of his business model that he had back then. Now, he did television commercials. In fact, I saw him on the television commercials here in Tupelo years before I met him. And then after I met him, I put it all together. And, that's Bobby Brock. So anyway, but Bobby helped me a lot. And he was able, he'd been in business a little longer than me, maybe a whole lot longer. I'm not sure when Bobby got started, but I feel like he got started about 10 years before I did. But anyway, he did a lot more business, of course, than I did. I was just getting started back in those days. And he was able to get me appointed with a lot of companies that helped me out financially quite a bit. So Bobby's been a good influence, no doubt about it. And on that note, I wanted to mention that I asked Bobby, now this was later on, not in 2004, 5, or 6, probably maybe around, and I'm not sure when you were a Marine, but I knew you were in the Marine Corps because I'd said something to Bobby one day. I said, Bobby, what are you going to do with your business, later on? Because I'm older than Bobby, and I was already starting to think about, well, how long am I going to do this? How long will I last, and how long do I want to do it? Well, I love the business. I'd like to do it forever, you know what I mean? But Bobby said, well, I've got a son. He's in the Marine Corps. He's over in Iraq, I think he said.
Yeah.
And he's going to get out so-and-so another year or whatever, and I plan on incorporating him into the business. So a couple of years went by, and we were talking about that again. And I said, oh, by the way, have you got your son working with you? And he said, no, he re-upped for another tour of duty. And I said, oh, really?
Well, coincidentally, to fill in that timeline there, I got married as soon as I joined the Marine Corps. And about a year before, I was looking at getting out. And there's a couple things going on here. Obamacare was signed into law when I was in Iraq. It didn't start taking full effect, but that also started to change my dad. He didn't know what was going to happen to insurance. There was a lot of fear, and they didn't know how it was all going to affect. Turns out it probably, if anything, it helped agents. It didn't really hurt us, much. even the ones that did hurt, if they stuck around, they probably came out better. But then at the same time, my wife got pregnant with our son Jackson, who's now well on his way to 12 years old. But so there was some uncertainty in the marketplace. I didn't know anything about insurance, even though it was part of my plan going forward. And when you joined, because you served, we were on an 8-year contract, but 4 active, 4 inactive. And the way the kind of war effort at the time was going, there was a high possibility as a Marine that they were going to make me serve my inactive time active anyway. Mm-hmm. So I said, you know what, we're secure. If I re-up voluntarily, I'll get what they call duty station preference, and I could choose where we went. So we chose to go to Iwakuni, Japan. And part of that was the goal was to not deploy for 7, 8 to 12 months at a time away from my now son and wife. Then I learned, though, when you're in Japan, it's 2 months at a time, but it's 2 months there, 2 months back, 2 months there. And then when we did that might have been even worse because it was so much back and forth. But that's kind of that timeline. And thankfully, I did still get out, 4 years after that, but and came back and worked with him. And it's been great. And I sometimes default to saying these things that people say, I wish I'd have got out when I said I would the first 4 years, but my daughter was born in Japan. You can't wish for anything. That was all destined to be. I've now have 2 kids that I don't know if I'd have if I'd have done that. So that's that timeline. So that's funny to hear his take on it because I hadn't heard somebody say that before. But
well, I was in the Air Force, and I think I had the same contract that you had, and I 4 years active, and 4 years inactive. But I got out first chance I had after I got my honorable discharge also in 1974. But and on this talking about the military, it wasn't long. I thought they were going to call me back in because that was when the killing fields. I can't think of the dictator's name in the country close to Vietnam over there, but anyway,
Cambodia.
Yeah, Cambodia. And I got a letter from the Air Force saying, "Get ready, you may be coming back into the Air Force."
Cambodia was rough. That's where a lot of the even in Vietnam. I had a customer one time, and this bringing that into customer stories sometimes were the greatest. Yeah. But they told us he was in Vietnam and they would do these community relations flights over to help, and he was a helo crew chief.
Right.
Go over and deliver vaccines and supplies to small villages in Cambodia. And, well, I probably shouldn't even tell the rest of the story because it was really gruesome what they did to this village that they delivered stuff to, these drug, kind of like we have cartels in Mexico now. They had these cartels in Cambodia. That was a rough place. I'm glad you didn't have to go to anything.
Oh, I am too. I don't think I would have liked that. No. Well, the letter stated that if we went to war, so to speak. So fortunately, we never did go to war with Cambodia, I'm glad to say.
Thank God.
But anyway, that's where I first heard about you. But when I loved working out of my home office, and it was funny, in that a lot of people came over to my home. I mean, I can't tell you how much business I did on my kitchen table back in those days. I had an office. We had a mother-in-law wing on one end of the home, and that's where our office was. And there was only maybe four of us, and was the max amount of people that I had working at that time. My son, my wife, and we had a secretary, so to speak, to take the calls when we were on the phone. I always liked taking the calls myself. When the phone would ring, I wanted to get right down to business. Instead of secretary answering the phone, okay, let me see who's available. I'd pick up the phone unless I was on the phone. And that's how I've had my agents do it in the past. They, instead of any of the front office people were there to answer the phone at my agency if all of the agents were on the phone. But if there was an available agent, we had a little system. If on the first ring, it was one agent's responsibility. They were dedicated to answering the first ring. And then if they were on the phone, the phone would ring a second time, and the second agent would answer the phone.
Yeah.
And then if it rang a third time, then my front office would answer the phone. And it was a real simple, plan, but it worked. It did. Yeah. We did good with that. And I think people loved it. I think people I know they love fast service. I know I do. I'm just like anybody else.
Yep.
Fast, good service. So that's how I did business for many a year. And a lot of those people, though, when we did a lot of the back early on when I first got into the insurance business, and all I've ever done is Medicare supplements. I've never we write life insurance. We've written some annuities, just a few other things, but Medicare supplements is all I've ever marketed. And there's a lot of business. I left a lot of business on the table, there's no doubt about it, but I wrote a lot of Medicare supplements because in my office, the phone pretty much never stopped ringing. I mean, it was just as fast as anybody could answer the phone, and we were talking to people. But going back to the point I was going to make, a lot of the people would want to come over to the house, and they'd pull up in the driveway. We'd set an appointment, and they'd come to the front door, and I'd invite them in, and we'd walk into the kitchen, and they'd sit down, and everybody never had any complaints. I mean, that was the one thing I always wondered about. Did people think that was out of the ordinary to come over to an agent's home and sit there for an hour or two or whatever it took, 30 minutes?
It's funny because I don't talk to a lot of agents that did it that way, but I grew up in a similar circumstance. My dad didn't have an office, when I was growing up. He had an office in his house. He built a kind of a wing, wasn't a mother-in-law's quarters, but he built a wing on for his master bedroom later on and built himself an office that had its own entryway. And he'd have customers come there, but we were looking through photos, at his house last night, and there's photos of him at the kitchen table with paperwork all over the kitchen table. And, we had we had electric hot water heaters and stuff the kitchen looked like an old country kitchen back then, but he did it that way. He had a little desk in the corner of the kitchen. I grew up like that, answering the phone. He trained me how to answer the phone. All the applications were paper, so UPS and FedEx or whatever would deliver these huge boxes. So it was my job to get those boxes and put them where they needed to go. So I grew up doing that, and now I still have customers that'll talk to us now that'll say, yeah, I met you when you were 14, working with your dad. I mean, we've had customers that we've had that long, 15, 20 years. They're still there, and they remember coming to our house. But I don't even remember them, and somehow they remember them, which is crazy. But, when you're a teenager, all kinds of things going on in your mind.
Oh, yeah.
But we had the same thing, and, Bob built the business on service and taking care of each person, heavy on the Medicare supplement side. And it's a great scaling medium because it's full of rich quality referrals too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
And we've branched out and do some other things now and grown it, but we really try to keep that core office, fixated on getting back to people as fast as possible and helping them, with what they want. He always had a thing. He had a lot of these things he would teach me when I came into it, but one of them was sell them what they want, then sell them what they need. And most of these people that were coming to us wanted a Medicare supplement, so that's what we'd help them with. But it's been a great relationship working with you. He had a great relationship with you, and then since I worked with you, it's always been great. And so
absolutely,
super happy we could partner together.
I am too.
I think the combination of us being able to close that gap between South Haven, where you guys have a great presence, in Tupelo,
right, with
Holly Springs and all these different communities, is just going to allow us to further serve more people in North Mississippi. Through two great names in the business, and very glad that we could work together on that.
I agree. I started early on, and again, I got a little bit of this direction from your dad, Bobby, but I have been marketing myself to the whole state of Mississippi, top to bottom, for probably 12, 15 years. And it's paid off. Not only the referrals is really the name of the game for me. I mean, we get a bunch of referrals.
Yeah.
But what has happened and it's kind of funny the way it worked out. I never thought about this early on, but somebody that's turning 65, we mail out to everybody in the state of Mississippi. We buy data, everybody that turns 65. But then we continue to mail out to everybody in Mississippi after that. And when they get that letter, they remember they may not have bought any insurance from us, a med sup or whatever in the beginning, but they see that letter and they say, I've seen that name somewhere. I recognize that name. Some people remember, some don't. Yeah. And we handed out in everybody that turned 65, we would include a little magnetic business card. And I can't tell you how many people would call in and say, I got your magnetic card 3 years ago, but I didn't want to retire, and I've had it on my refrigerator all this time, and here I am, ready to go.
Well, that's the same thing like you said when you had seen his commercial before you knew who he was, and you met him in Cancun, and then it clicked. Oh, that's the guy that I saw on that TV commercial. It's that right. Branding approach it's not always about. Some people look at marketing as having to convert. So we have friends that scale businesses, and they're very savvy in what we call the cost per acquisition game. They know the numbers and all that, but none of them really know much about branding.
Right.
And so we always preach, always be branding, because branding, the way we've done it now, technically, and we wouldn't do this, but technically we could cut off marketing, and referrals would continue to pour in for some time to come. You can't do that when you think about things as a dollar amount per acquisition of a client versus, putting brands out there. And so some people would say, well, when you're doing a TV commercial, you might be, how do you know that person is actually interested in your service? Well, I don't. But heck, if we've been advertising to people since they were people that are turning 65 now, have been seeing that TV commercial since they were 50. Meant nothing to them, and now they're starting to get all that mail in,
right?
And now it means something to them. They're like, well, shoot, that Bobby Brock guy, that Justin Brock, that Brock agency that's been on TV forever, I guess I need to see what the hell they've been talking about.
Really?
All this time.
Oh, well, and that's true. That works. But I think the partnership's great. I think it's going to work out. It's going to help us tremendously in that, just like this last AEP, I don't have room at my office. I've got a lease there. I don't have the room that you have to have any more agents. I'm just filled up. I don't have room to hire anybody else. Now, of course, I could expand the office, but this past AEP, we didn't have enough people, and you helped supply us with an agent. And so the service, what I see in the partnership is, if anything, at the very least, our service will increase a little bit for us. And then, like you, we kind of mentioned, we kind of overlap, so I think we'll pick up a little more business that way. I think
in the middle it'll be good. We've never hit Holly Springs and Byhalia and those areas a whole lot, and you guys have more customers there. With us having no difference in interest in those areas collectively, meeting in the middle, I think will be really good. And we plan to do some of the things that we've done to help with the name brand that you've created just by doing the right thing over a long period of time. And I think it's going to be awesome. I'm really excited about it.
Well, I am too.
Yeah,
there's no doubt. It's going to be a good thing. I mean, it's a win-win situation, and including the policyholders. A win-win-win situation, I'll say. And just because the service will be elevated, and that's, as I mentioned, that's what I have sold all my life, not just in the insurance business, but I've always sold service, and that's what it's all about. And what you said earlier too, you've got to sell somebody what they want. I mean, there's no need trying to sell somebody what they don't want. They may buy it then, but then change their mind the next day. Yeah.
Then you don't get the same quality of referrals off of them either if they feel like they've been sold to versus helped and educated.
Right.
And we're in an environment in this industry where there's a lot of acquisitions or partnerships and mergers and things going on. But I study those and watch them. I can't think of anything that I've seen in the industry that would work better than our agencies will work together. There's a lot of them that it's just like there's so much money floating around to invest in our industry. They're acquiring things they don't even know what they're acquiring.
Right.
With us in this partnership, like the core principles and ethics of our organizations are the same. And we're territorially convenient because geographically we're not that far apart, and it's going to work really well. I think I'm just it doesn't make any sense. And we had not gone out there and thought, oh, we want to invest in partnerships with other agencies. Just talking to you and being friends with you for a long time, it just is going to work better.
Right.
And that's why we were interested in partnering with you to this level. It's not something we're going out and trying to find other people to do. It just makes sense for us.
Oh, I agree. I mean, this all just came about. I mean, it just made so much sense. We've never thought about it before, but it all just came about within the last couple of months. Mm-hmm. Seeing how well you could help us, you've got so many agents available. But one other thing that not only will it help with the service, in my opinion, for the policyholder. And day to day, normally our service is 5-star. Like I said, it was just during annual enrollment that things got a little hectic for us. Yeah. But by pooling the resources, we should be able to get better deals from the insurance companies, I would say. I mean, it's all about volume with the insurance company.
Absolutely is. And when you're talking, one thing I noticed years ago when I came in with Bob, and over a couple of years, I called my dad Bob because if I don't, everybody around me won't know who I'm talking about, it seems like. So, but he, when I came in, it was in the off season, I think they were able to capture 99% of what was coming in. But in AEP, we were never staffed up to the capability to capture the frenzy that happens because of all the marketing. And so now, and part of this, I made friends with some call center guys, and what they were doing was they would have this hiring surge before AEP, and then they'd fire the non-performers after AEP. And I didn't want to be a part of that, but I thought there had to be a model where we could support creating a long-term advisor and support them year-round so that during AEP we had that fishing net big enough. It's kind of like, that's what I tell people. If you go out and you're fishing and you're net fishing, or shrimping or whatever, you don't want to have too small of a net or capacity to capture all the fish when you find the honey hole. Right. And AEP is that honey hole for us, and so we want to have the biggest net. And I think there's a lot more meat on the bone because we saw that with our agency, and I'm assuming it'll be the same with yours. Is you guys had such a commitment to 5-star service that in AEP you probably couldn't get to everybody because you were taking such good care of the people that you were talking to. And I think that our net being bigger collectively will allow us to help more people and still continue that same quality of service.
Oh, yeah, I agree. And to kind of correlate, a pizza restaurant, I'm going to correlate a business here, but a pizza restaurant can only grow as much as they can do on a Friday night, which is their peak business day and peak hours. So if they cannot handle all of the business that they can do on a Friday night, they're not going to grow. That's how they'll stop growing right at that point. So I wanted to back up just a little bit, Justin. We were talking about when I worked out of my home office.
Yeah.
I wanted to just mention in the early days I did, as mentioned, the telemarketing leagues where 100% of my business calls were done at the home of the customer. I'd make an appointment at 2 o'clock and go over to their home at 2 o'clock. And I found I was pretty good at doing that. I was real comfortable in a home with somebody, talking to them at their kitchen table.
Right.
But then when the business kind of started, when the do not call list came around, started mailing out the letters, and I wasn't sure I could do myself the sales over the telephone. I was used to I loved doing business face to face, you know what I mean? Yeah. I knew I could do that. but I wasn't sure that I could do it over the telephone. But sure enough, it didn't take but a few days, and I found out that just as easy to do that kind of business over the phone.
It's just mental. And we see that. We talk to agents that have gone out. They're still doing just face-to-face. You know, a lot of them start off on the final expense side, so they drop direct mail leads, and then they go out and they do face-to-face. And a lot of those get into Medicare Advantage because it's a heavy Medicare Advantage market face-to-face now. But when you start talking to them about doing business over the phone, it seems like it's just a mental block that you're having the same conversation. There's a couple of things that you have to do to keep them on the phone long enough to be comfortable with you.
Right.
But if you've ever had a good phone conversation with somebody, you know you should be able to have a good phone conversation with a prospect. So, yeah. Well, awesome. Well, I'm pumped, and we're gonna be able to serve more North Mississippi Medicare beneficiaries at I would say a higher quality rate, but at the same quality, because we've already been at peak quality. We'll always try to do better, but that's our goal. You're going to help us do that.
Absolutely.
We're helping you do that, and so we appreciate it, buddy.
Oh, absolutely, Justin. Yes, sir. I'm excited. I'm pumped also, to tell you the truth. I'll be able to slow down a little bit in my work capacity, so to speak. And I'm 70, as mentioned, 70 years old. So, I want to get out on the golf course. I want to go fishing. I want to go hiking, in the mountains, so on and so forth.
I just want to spend the next couple decades earning the right to go hiking and spend some time on the golf course.
It's fun. I will say that.
Yeah, I bet. Well, we want you to do that, and we're super glad to have this partnership. So thank you for being here today. And we'll wrap it up. But if you guys have any questions, Gary's still around. And, of course, if you're watching this on our website or anywhere, you can submit a request for information and ask anything you want to. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thanks again for inviting me here today, Justin.
Absolutely.